Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Joy Hub, the channel where we want to help leaders, teams, and couples journey into deeper joy. It's been a while since we've done one of these, and you've especially been going through some stuff, and actually we want to talk about that a little bit today because we're going to talk about difficulties and challenges, and it seems a little bit counterintuitive, I guess, for a channel called Joy Hub.
But I mean, we have to admit that life is not always full of joyful circumstances. And so I know I used to think of life more of like waves of good, and then like a wave of difficulty might follow that. And or I think about it as hills and valleys, like, oh, I just want to be on top of the hill where everything's going the way I want it to go. But we all know that we enter those seasons of difficulty. And so I used to think of it in that context, but I think as I've gotten older and lived a little bit longer, I've come to see that it's more like two train tracks, where you've got a season where you can look around and see that there's difficulty and there's joy, and it's
at the same time.
At the same time, there's always something you can be joyful and thankful for, and then there's always hurting and suffering. And so it's learning to navigate both. In life that can get tricky sometimes. Don't you think?
And I think sometimes as followers of Christ, we can wrongly believe that life is just going to be easy and everything is going to work out the way we want it to, and somehow we're immune to, or we don't deserve hard things. And I just tell you, in my life, like I've learned the most in the hard things. I've drawn near to God more so usually in the hard things than even the easy things.
Yeah, and I think too, you look around after you've had a difficult season, when you're experiencing more daily joy and life is just less difficult, makes you appreciate life a little bit more. And so we don't ever invite those in, but I think we can't live also, like sometimes I can be a very positive, like the glass is half full person, where I can try to almost pretend like there's not suffering around me or difficulty. And so I don't think it's good to focus or get stuck too much on one track or the other, but to recognize both. But what are some of the things that trip us up on navigating the two tracks?
I think a lot of times for me, it's definitely myself, but what first came to mind was other people. I mean, I know I have my own stuff to deal with, but sometimes what knocks me off of the joy track is other people, and other people acting unloving, and other people stealing. I shouldn't allow it, but other people stealing my joy by their words or behavior or actions towards me.
Yeah, I can definitely fall into that. I know one thing that's been hard for me to navigate is when God calls me to prolong suffering. You know, I don't mind like here and there, like, oh, it's a difficult season, but I'm always trying to get back onto the joy track. But when God calls you to something that's prolonged, for me, a few years back, I fainted and fell and had a compression fracture L3, where I broke my back. And so it's been a 2-year journey, and it's rare for there to have been a day in that 2 years where I've had some level of pain. And I keep going weekly, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, to appointments, and there's every therapy we've tried, multiple doctors, and they just can't give me a lot of relief. And so I get weary sometimes with the daily pain of, like, you know, last week I couldn't bend over and tie my shoe without pain, you know. And so that's where I can really get down to despair, of lose my hope that I'm ever going to be without pain. So I think when God calls me into a difficult season of that, it can be hard for me, and it can definitely trip me up. And so how do we get past it?
How do we get to joy even in those prolonged times, whether it's people we want to strangle, or like with you, physical pain of 2 years? What do you do?
For me, what I try to do is focus on, I can't control my circumstances. I can't control whether or not I'm in pain, but I can control what I focus on. And so for me, I love Hebrews 12:2 that tells me to fix my eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of my faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. And so if it worked for Jesus, it will work for me. If I just focus on what I can control, which is my hope that is in Jesus, that's where I can experience joy, even in painful days. And I don't lose hope that there could be a season where I won't have the physical pain. And so I think not losing hope and knowing where you're putting your hope on and fixing it on the right spot is what really helps me to experience joy, even on those difficult days.
Yeah. And again, you don't know what's going to happen, but what you do know is that in eternity, you have hope in eternity that you're actually going to have new body,
yes,
new life. And, I think for me, in thinking about dealing with hardship or difficulty as it relates to other people, it gives me an opportunity to look at myself and be honest about what is going on in my own heart. But you know what? If I hit a season where I just feel like no one seems glad to be with me, no one seems to be joyful to have me around, I have a God who is.
Yeah.
I love the way David says it in Psalm 16, that in God's presence, there's fullness of joy. There's eternal pleasures at God's right hand. And so even though there are times where relationships can feel strained, and even honestly, and maybe this is another content piece, sometimes there's an appropriate place for a break in those relationships, or at least take a breather in those relationships. But again, when I'm seeing that, experiencing that, feeling that as it relates to others, it can push me to remember, but there's a God who takes joy in me. There's a God, my Father in heaven, who loves me and wants me to be in close relationship with him. So we hope this is helpful. We hope as you think about your life, that you too can realize it's not just about the ups and downs, but the reality that it is more like train tracks, that there's even in the midst of difficulty, there's always someone to find joy in.
Yes.
So thanks for tuning in. See you guys next time.
Thanks.
Bye.